Hey there, I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Often random, but always relevant, always real, and practically nothing is off limits. This podcast is for you. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome back to the program, guys. I want to thank you all for being here with me this evening. And we have joining us tonight the one and only Nina D. Nina, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I can't complain other than the debris out in the yard.
Yeah, I hope that you're able to rebuild quickly there in Florida, and that you and everyone you know is safe.
Yeah. It's it could have been it could have been much worse. It definitely could have been worse. I didn't have any trees hit the house, so other than that, I do have a lot of trees down on the property. I've got a couple acres out here in the woods, and a lot of cleanup. But other than that, it was okay.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking before we got started here. I had mentioned that you have some dates coming up in Florida. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so we're coming through 2 different cities in Florida for the very first time. People have been begging us to bring our shows closer to the south because they tend to be either in the Northeast or out west where we live in Las Vegas. So for the first time, we're going to be in Fort Myers, Florida on November 22nd. We're going to be playing at the Barbara B. Mann Performing Arts Hall. And then on the 23rd, the night after, we are going to be at Casino Dania Beach, which is near Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
And tickets for those shows can both be found on our website, femmesofrock.com. And we also are offering VIP meet and greet experiences at both of those shows for our Florida fans.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. One of the questions that I get, and one of the questions that I've seen from following you on social media, we all know that you were classically trained on the violin and you play multiple instruments. But one of the questions I get is about your use of not just the electric violin, but the fact that your violin, I've seen with 5 strings, and I believe you have a 7-string you've played with, and then there's others that have frets on them. Where did you come up with that?
So when I first started playing, and all the way through my classical training master's degree, I played a regular 4-string acoustic.
Right.
My acoustic violin was built in 1752. It's a Klotz violin. And so that was the violin that I used through my entire classical career. And when I have performances that require that type of instrument, I will still use it or record with it to this day. When I got an electric, they had 5 strings so that you could have the low C string on it. So my very first one was a Yamaha 5-string, and I could play either a viola or a violin by having that 5th string on the violin. This was also a fretless. Then I realized that some of the guitar solos that I started covering during COVID, I couldn't reach all of the guitar notes with a 5-string. So I needed a 6-string. And so I found a fretted Markwood Viper that was 6 strings. And what I would do is tune the bottom F string down to an E, and then I would have the entire range of a guitar on the violin. Then I decided that I wanted to learn eruption. And with that, even 6 strings wasn't enough, and I needed 7. So I had a custom-made fretted 7-string electric violin made from Markwood Vipers. And the finger tapping section that I translated to violin wouldn't have been possible on a fretless instrument. So that's why certain guitar techniques you need the frets to be able to do on a violin. Power chords are easier, pinch harmonics are easier, tapping is definitely, possible with the frets. So each of my violins, and I probably own over 30 of them, they all serve a different purpose, and I use them for different repertoire. Just like a guitar player would probably go to a show and you see a guitar player with a rack of guitars and they're all lined up for different purposes during the show.
Yeah. Well, I happen to be a drummer, And over the course of my life, I probably only owned about 8 kits. And at one yeah, and at one time only actually had 2 or 3 in the house at the same time. And I'd take a small kit out to some of the little clubs, and then sometimes when we did festivals or something like that, I'd take the bigger kit out. Uh, but it was, hauling around a bunch of drums can be quite a chore.
Well, even one drum kit probably took up the same amount of storage space as my 30 violins do. So there's that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be something else. Uh, now you have quite the resume. Not only with your current project with the Femmes of Rock, but I mean you go way back with Blues Traveler and Stevie Wonder, Deep Purple, Cheap Trick, Wayne Newton, CeeLo. I mean the list goes on and on and on. Um, when did you start finding your traction in being able to get into those situations, the studio vibes with big names like that?
I was very lucky. I was still a student living in Buffalo, and I took a visit to Las Vegas to visit my cousins who lived in Las Vegas. It was my
Hmm.
senior year of school, and I went to see a comedy music show called the Shintas, and they were headlining at the Rio at the time out in Las Vegas. They're from Buffalo, so my family knew them, and so we ended up talking with them after the show. And I ended up meeting Wayne Newton's music director after the show, and they had just lost a violinist in the show and they were looking to hire someone, and of course they gave me a glowing endorsement. Oh, she's a great violinist, you should hire her. And I actually got the job playing in Wayne Newton's orchestra when I was still in school, and that was my first job. And so it was a pretty good first job to have, and I got a lot of experience doing that. And after that show ended, my name was recommended to audition for Toni Braxton's band, and I got the job as her solo violinist for a little while after that. And then after that, I did some dates with David Foster, and it was kind of like one good thing led to another. And, everything was kind of like dominoes at that point. And then before I knew it, I'm a musician and this is what I do. And then, over the course of that time, I was developing my own show, the Femmes of Rock show. So I was performing as a hired gun with other artists, but also developing my own touring show, which is what I mainly do now.
Uh, Before we talk about the Femmes of Rock, which I want to definitely go into, I know you've mentioned many times before. You've said, "Go Bills,"
That's right.
and so I have to actually begrudgingly congratulate you and the Bills on beating my hometown Jacksonville Jaguars here recently.
Well, that was an embarrassing game for the Jaguars, followed
Yes,
by
it
an
was.
embarrassing game by the Bills because the Ravens spanked us the same way that we spanked the Jaguars. So it was one of those things. I almost didn't want us to win by that much because whenever a team blows out another team, they lose the next week. That's just the psychology of it. So, but anyways, yeah, I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence. He's got to find his stride again.
I don't know if he ever had the stride. There's a lot of moaning and groaning here in Jacksonville. They spent a lot of money on that young man.
Yeah, that's true. And most of sports is like that. I'm also a Yankee fan, and there's a saying in New York, they'll say, "You're only as good as your last at bat in New York." I guess that's kind of true no matter what sport you're in. So,
Yeah, yeah. Now, the Femmes of Rock. It's quite a mashup of a lot of different material. When you watch, your Sizzler reel that you have, and the other videos, I mean, you see a wide variety of music styles and different, types of music. Some melodic, some hard hitting, some hard edge. But you're all over the place, and it just sounds fantastic. How do uh, when you and your partners there in the group, the other young ladies that play, when you get together, I mean, how do you uh, you know, envision these tunes when you listen to the tunes and you say, well, we're going to do it this way, or we're going to do it that way, or we're going to try to make it as hard edge or as melodic as possible. How do you go about making those decisions?
Well, I guess the easiest way to say it would be I started out writing arrangements of my favorite music when I was a kid. So, starting with Led Zeppelin Kashmir and Black Dog and Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd and The
Hmm.
Who, Baba O'Reilly, and Who Are You? The music that I was into listening, I adapted for string quartet. And then as I got older, I adapted them even more in depth. As I became a better arranger, I would add things to it. I would edit it. I would add in more instruments. So now we have the live band as well as the strings, not just the string quartet anymore. And obviously, there's things you want to think of. Like sometimes there's things lend themselves really well to strings already. So you can kind of do what's already in the song. And sometimes there's nothing in the song. For instance, we do like Ramblin' Man in our Southern Rock medley by the Allman Brothers. There's not really, a string quartet going on in that song, but I wrote string parts for it and added them to the song, which kind of contributes to our style. Like we take these rock songs and we will add our own style to it,
Hmm.
sometimes with completely original arrangements that don't even exist in the original song. We kind of did the same thing for our Rush medley. There's obviously not like a string quartet, in YYZ, but we we kind of added our own string parts to it, and in a lot of the other things, and added harmonies. And of course, some of the stuff, obviously, when there's a great guitar solo, I'll cover that on the electric violin, or one of the other violinists will. And that's kind of one of our big things, is being able to translate electric guitar solos to electric violin and kind of sound as similar as we can to the original artist. So I would say, it's a combination of my favorite music, great guitar solos, and things that just translate well to the violin.
Let me ask you about your involvement in the project, the Bella Electric Strings. Explain to us what that is.
So Bella Electric Strings, it started kind of when I was younger, when I would, like I said, I would write these arrangements of rock music for string quartet. You couldn't just go out and buy a string quartet arrangement of Kashmir back when I was a kid. That's
I guess
all
not.
more recently, in more recent history. So I would hand write these charts on paper. I would draw staff lines because I couldn't afford the computer software yet to write the scores. And then I would draw these string quartet arrangements. We'd play them at restaurants. We'd get little gigs around the Buffalo area when we were kids. And then when I moved to Las Vegas to play with Wayne Newton, I met other musicians who were into the gig scene in Las Vegas, other musicians who were young like I was. And we decided that we wanted to put together an official electric string quartet with backing tracks. So we had someone create backing tracks, and then we would play my string quartet arrangements on top of them. And we got a pretty good niche going in the corporate market in Las Vegas. So we're doing 200, 250 corporate events a year, not just in Las Vegas, but we would
Wow.
travel as well to other corporate markets doing this string quartet rock music to backing tracks. And the group still exists today. They still perform quite often. I don't perform full time with them anymore, maybe a couple times a year, because I still book, manage, and produce the group, but I'm mostly performing in the touring ticketed show now. So the private events, I'm not playing in all of those anymore. I just mostly do the public ticketed show, which is the big version, the Femmes of Rock show with the live band and the singing and the multimedia media video experience and all of that.
Well, there's only so many days in the week.
Yeah, and I have a couple little kids too, so that it's
Yeah,
definitely only
yeah,
a
yeah.
week.
Well, there you go. How many kids you got?
I have two and a stepdaughter, so three total.
Very nice, very nice. I have three adult children, one stepdaughter, and five grandchildren.
Wow, so you got a pretty big family.
I'm old. Hey, going forward with Femmes of Rock, how now you've already said that you're doing. I mean, you've got all these, hundreds of gigs a year. Do you see? Do you see either the Femmes of Rock or Nina as a soloist moving forward with any more television?
Yes, probably the TV will come when I launch my solo album and my solo show because it'll be a lot more original music. Television is very difficult when you're doing,
Hmm.
cover songs. There requires a whole
Sure.
different legal aspect. When you're just playing a song live in a venue, the venue kind of pays a blanket entertainment tax so that you can play cover songs live. But as soon as you're going to put it on television, that requires a completely different type of licensing. And,
Yeah.
I think it can get quite expensive for either the artist or whatever station is going to broadcast or try and license that music. So we haven't done any like DVD releases or television with Femmes of Rock. But once I start my own original project launch, there'll probably be some of that comes along with it.
We want to see you on cable TV.
Yeah.
Uh, we want to see you. It would have. I would think. I would think it would go over really big if you had a pay per view kind of thing going on there.
Yeah, definitely. And it also helps having social media too. We've done some live streaming performances that started during COVID that people really enjoyed. And I might go back to doing some of that when the actual physical touring is slow. We may do some more of those online performances as well.
Sure, sure. And I'll tell you, I see on your social media as well. You do little short, reels, shorts and reels. Kind of along the lines of an instructional kind of thing. You talking to the viewer, telling them what you're doing. The instruments and the song and why you like it and those kind of things. And I think those are very valuable too.
Yes, thank you. I started doing those during COVID when we couldn't perform live, and I started taking solos that I would do in our show, only I would record them and put them out on my social media. And a lot of them went viral, and I didn't expect it to kind of take off like that. So
Hmm.
now that we're back to touring again, I decided to keep up with making the videos for social media because it's really grown our audience quite a bit. But I do like to give a little backstory about, either why I like the piece that I've chosen or how I learned it and things like that, just so that it's not just putting it
Hmm.
out there. It's kind of giving a little bit of an educational story as well, I guess.
Sure, sure, sure. There's a lot of people that see things like that, and they benefit from it. You can easily surmise that there's a lot of young ladies out there that watch what you're doing, and men too. But there's a lot of young ladies out there that watch what you do, and they really look up to what you're doing.
Well, I hope so. I hope that people can kind of see what I'm doing and have an easier time doing it 10 or 20 years after I do. Because when I was first starting out, there was not a lot, even now. I mean, when I was trying to learn Eruption or Crazy Train on electric violin, you can't really find, you if you want to learn it on guitar, there's a million tutorials on YouTube. You could just sit down, learn the exact settings and the exact way to learn any of these solos. But on a violin, you're kind of carving the path and teaching yourself and like a mad scientist how to make these sounds and how to make these techniques happen on a totally different instrument. So hopefully by having these videos out there, the next generation of kids that wants to do it will have an easier time than I did.
Yeah, you're like the new Buddy Love. You got all these young folks coming up, learning new instruments. And when I was growing up, and like we talked about before, I'm a drummer, and so there was all kinds of guys I looked up to. Then over the years, I started finding videos and recordings of female drummers that were just killing it. Uh, Karen Carpenter, a
Oh yeah, she's
phenomenal drummer.
and singing at the same time too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually did a couple of podcast episodes a couple of years ago. It was a series, and it was I called it "Women Behind the Kit," and three of my guests were all women that live in the North Florida area that play drums regularly, and they're all super talented. And every time I had one of them on the show, we always came back to talking about Karen Carpenter.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen Carpenter was a badass. I mean, you watch some of the videos of her
Yeah.
doing Buddy Rich style stuff. And then she sings like a bird, like incredible, super talented.
Yep, yep. I tell you, it's something else. So, before we go, uh, let me ask you this: what are your plans now? We were talking about you going into TV, and that's something we'd all love to see. And you've already got a couple hundred gigs a year. Uh, is there uh, anything else that we can look forward to from Nina D and or the Femmes of Rock going into 2025? Any fantastic gigs, festivals? What can we look for?
Well, we are always adding new venues onto our tour list for the Femmes of Rock. And what you can expect from the Femmes of Rock next year, the next time we come through a lot of these places, we'll have some new medleys going on in the show. So the set list is going to change. We're always trying to add new arrangements and new fun surprises to the show.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be that to look forward to at the Femmes of Rock. On my end of things, I'm working on some original music, and I'm hoping to have an original album out maybe by the end of the year and see where that goes, because that's the logical next step for me after Eruption. There's like nothing else I could cover now beyond that that's going to kind of top that, I don't think. So at this point, I need to start getting my own music out into the world and see what happens with it. So I'm confident that if I work hard and put out a good product, that the right people will see it and good things will happen.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'll tell you what, Nina, it's been a joy talking to you. Have you got any closing thoughts for us? Final words of wisdom.
Well, hopefully anyone who's in Florida who is, within remote driving distance of Fort Myers or Dania Beach will pick up a ticket to the show, because the way we get to expand to more cities is by selling a good amount of tickets in the cities that we are coming to. So if we can go kill it in Fort Myers and Dania Beach, there's a good chance next time we come to Florida, we'll be in even more cities that time. So, come out to the shows. I know everyone in Florida has probably got a lot on their mind right now. So it'll be 90 minutes of music where you can get your mind off of everything else and just kind of, forget about things and enjoy for a little bit of time at least. So we hope to
Sure.
see everybody at our shows.
Fantastic, fantastic. Uh, it was a joy, and I tell you what, when your album comes out, I'm going to get a copy of it, and you're going to have to sign it for me.
All right. That sounds good deal to me. Okay.
Well, that's a wrap. Another fantastic episode of the podcast. You can find us on all the social media platforms, wherever you surf: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, Threads, wherever. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. And on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like, share, comment, and smash that subscribe button. If you're streaming audio for the podcast, you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcast programs. In the meantime, I like to tell everybody, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time, peace.